As the Senate begins to take nominees for the position of Chancellor after Valorum's disgraceful departure from politics, Palpatine raises his hand and puts his name forward. When he hears the names Bail Antilles of Alderaan and Ainley Team of Malastare also being put forward, he thinks that his chances are high of election. While both of these people are formidable individuals, the circumstances surrounding Naboo, along with Palpatine's humble demeanor, would surely propel him above his adversaries. As the Senate claps for him, Palpatine smiles and waves. This would be his grand moment. Finally, he could assume his seat of power and turn the cogs of the machine in his favor, creating a new system with him at the top. Once more, the Sith would rule the galaxy, and Palpatine could manifest his dream. However, one name makes Palpatine sit up slightly straighter. Mon Mothma of Chandrila rings through the halls of the Senate as Mas Amedda proclaims one last name. This gains a raucous applause. While she was new to politics, Mon Mothma had already become the darling of galactic politics, and many saw her as the face of the future. She's an idealistic, commanding, and charismatic presence who believes in peace for everyone. Palpatine was a symbol of the old order, whereas Mon Mothma was the voice of the next generation. A small knot of anxiety forms in Palpatine's stomach. Maybe his plans weren't so safe after all. Have you ever wondered what would have happened if Mon Mothma had challenged Palpatine for the Chancellorship in the Phantom Menace? If so, then you're in for a treat. Settle in with a warm bowl of bantha stew, because this is what if Mon Mothma had challenged Palpatine for the position of Chancellor. After Mon Mothma puts her name forward for the Chancellorship, Palpatine begins to become skeptical. For years, he had been planning his ascent to power, and now one new senator from, granted, a wealthy background on Chandrila was going to change all of that? When she places her bid for Chancellor, in all of the debates, she electrifies those present with her respectful, hopeful charisma. She is powerful, she is kind, she is humble, and she, most importantly, is young, a face that would actually want to change the way the system operated. While Palpatine's rhetoric is far more targeted, far more angry, and far more emblematic of somebody from the old system, Mon Mothma appears to be somebody who actually wants to change things. She's perceived as a young new face in politics who can hopefully help alter the galaxy. And Palpatine's old and ancient contributions to the establishment that had upheld the system that had allowed for Naboo to be invaded does not bode favorably for him in this situation. So he watches as Mon Mothma rises on the coattails of her recent popularity to power. After one powerful debate, she annihilates all of the other candidates on stage with her peaceful propositions for how to change the galaxy. And after that, the Senate confirms her as the new Chancellor to succeed Valorum. Publicly, Palpatine congratulates her. Oh yes, Miss Mon Mothma, Chancellor of the Galaxy. I was her competition, but now I would simply like to congratulate her and wish her the best on her progression through galactic politics. I know that this is an incredibly different world than what she's used to, and I believe that she is up for the challenge. While we may have different opinions on how to change the galaxy, it is clear that she cares just as much as I do for the Republic, and that she will move the galaxy in the right direction, Palpatine says in his concession speech, to a round of applause from many supporters and dissidents alike. However, behind the scenes, Palpatine is much more angry. Now, he would have to rely on his growingly deranged master for even longer, and he wouldn't be able to take the reins of the grand plan himself. Because he was not yet Chancellor, he still needed Plagueis to funnel money towards campaigns and policies and lobby groups that would help aid him in achieving the powerful position that he desired. It was only a matter of time, though, until he would achieve that goal. Patience is a virtue for the Sith. At the ceremony for peace on Naboo, Anakin is present, studying with Obi-Wan in his Padawan robes adorned with the classic Padawan braid. So are Plagueis and Palpatine. Palpatine introduces Plagueis to Anakin. "Ah, my boy, young Anakin Skywalker," Plagueis says. I have heard a significant amount about you, and the fact that you are the sole reason that this planet emerged victorious. Your destruction of the droid control ship led to the liberation of Naboo. My name is Hugo Damask, and I am proud to make your acquaintance, young Skywalker, he says, stretching out his hand. Anakin smiles, shaking it emphatically. Hello, Mr. Damask. What a pleasure it is for me to meet you, too, he says. It was my pleasure to save this planet. I just love flying. I love pod racing, and I'm so excited to be a Jedi, he says. Hugo smiles. Oh, I'm sure that you are. And my friend here, Palpatine, and I are going to watch your career with great interest. Now, without you, this planet would have allowed the Trade Federation leaders to continue manipulating the banking system in order to gain financially. However, now they will be brought to justice for their actions, he says. Palpatine smiles. Yes, young boy, you have done exceptionally well, and I look forward to seeing where you go in the future, he says. The two of them walk away, smiling at one another. Anakin was the key to their success, and soon they would have the galaxy under their spell. In her first few months in office, the honeymoon period, Mon Mothma is heralded as a savior for the Republic. Her policies that promote regional autonomy, increased representation in the Senate for marginalized groups, and the expanded role of the Jedi in diplomatic missions is seen as something to be praised. Padmé, Bail Organa, and other prominent political figures in the galaxy believe that she is the key to actually saving the Republic, especially when she organizes an anti-corruption committee to try and root out government officials benefiting from manipulating the system while enriching their own wealth rather than working for the people that they were supposed to be in power for. She was intending to investigate what had happened with the Trade Federation and ensure that nothing like that ever happened again. Even Palpatine publicly puts his support behind her, stating that she is exactly the type of leader that the galaxy needed to prosper. However, in the shadows, Plagueis continues to manipulate the financial system with his banking contacts and Mune wealth. He uses his money to buy off senators, influence corporations, and continue to grind Mon Mothma's new initiatives to a halt with countless needless debates, insufficient squabbling, and powerful lobby groups supporting companies and politicians who believe that Mon Mothma's policy are infringing on their profit margins. Palpatine uses this to start manipulating Anakin, showing him that despite the powerful presence and hope of Mon Mothma, along with her bold initiatives that she's trying to implement, the system still does not function with all of the red tape involved. Perhaps, my boy, this galaxy needs even more reform, and maybe the government needs somebody in charge who can actually get things done. Perhaps, Skywalker, we need somebody who can tell the bureaucrats no, Palpatine says to him. Anakin looks at him and nods. Perhaps you're right, Senator, he says. While Obi-Wan had been a sufficient father figure to Anakin, Palpatine had also come in to fill that role, providing him with insight and wisdom as to how to live his life and how the galaxy actually functioned. He had brought Anakin a more realist perspective on the galaxy, showing him the flaws that many of the Jedi simply did not see. The worm about corruption in the Senate continues to burrow in Anakin's mind as he trains and engages in diplomatic missions with Obi-Wan, remembering his history as a slave. He still couldn't get past the fact that the Republic wasn't doing anything to help people like his mother who were still stuck in slavery. The Jedi weren't either. Not even Qui-Gon, who had liberated him, had initially come to free the slaves. All that they were doing was continuing to perpetuate the needs and the status quo of the powerful. This starts to make Anakin feel slightly disenfranchised by Republic leadership, and his bitterness towards the system gradually increases. Then, when Dooku begins speaking out in public and starts proclaiming his ideas and his separatist beliefs as the Count of Sereno, as an ex-Jedi, Anakin starts to empathize with him, and he wonders if perhaps maybe Dooku actually had a point. By the time of Attack of the Clones, everything is continuing to proceed as Palpatine had planned with his master. Plagueis and Palpatine are on the precipice of creating the exact war that they had needed, and the idea of creating a strong standing army for the Republic was starting to gain more traction as Separatist sentiments begin to rise across the galaxy. Padmé, while her term on Naboo had ended as queen, and she had not replaced Palpatine as the senator of Naboo, is still an influential political figure who often visits the capital for meetings with prominent people. She has the ear of many important senators. However, this time, something spectacular happens. When she is landing, she's attacked once again, and her ship explodes. However, she survives, and she goes to the Chancellor's office where they promote the idea that she should be protected as somebody with influence in the Senate and on her homeworld of Naboo. While initially hesitant, she finally agrees, and Obi-Wan is assigned with Anakin to take care of her. Naturally, Anakin continues to fawn over her, and Obi-Wan starts to warn that these are exactly the type of feelings that would lead him to embracing the dark side and cynicism. Trust me, Anakin, I've been down this road, and I don't want you to go down it as well. Be careful with your feelings towards the Senator, he says. Anakin looks at him. We'll see, Obi-Wan. It's just harmless. I'm not actually planning on doing anything, am I? He says. Obi-Wan looks back at him. Once again, Anakin, I'm simply telling you to be careful, especially before going to Naboo with her. I'll be on Kamino, looking for what is going on with this Dart and this assassin, but you, Anakin, you have the task of protecting Padmé. Don't screw it up. Be wise. I know you can be. I know you have the capacity to be. Just be wise, Obi-Wan says before leaving towards Kamino. When Anakin is on Naboo with Padmé, he ends up actually talking to her about his feelings. He shakes his head. I know that this is a taboo thing to discuss, Anakin says, but I have been seeing Count Dooku in the media more and more, and I think that he very well might have a point. Padmé looks at him sideways. What do you mean? You're sounding like a traitor, Anakin, she says. The Republic is becoming corrupt. They're not looking out for the interests of the common people. Not even Mon Mothma can change the system, he says. We need somebody who can change things, and if not, perhaps separatism is the best way to go for those who are not represented by the system. Padmé takes a moment before looking at him, trying to figure out a response. You're right, Anakin. The Republic is corrupt, but it's our duty to at least continue to try and make that change. We have a democracy to uphold. We have a galactic unity to preserve. Anakin shakes his head. Isn't that what Dooku is doing in his own way? Anakin says. Trying to preserve democracy and counter the Republic. Padmé looks at him in silence. I think that you need to talk more with Senator Palpatine and others like him. Perhaps even Mon Mothma, Padmé says. Then you'll see. Anakin shakes his head. Perhaps we simply agree to disagree on this one, Senator. Later on, they're still enjoying a romantic dinner together, and they share their tender kiss, falling in love with one another on that lakeside house. However, after seeing the death of his mother on Tatooine and receiving those visions, and the Republic's failure to maintain order in the Outer Rim, leading to the causes that had led to her death, Anakin decides to make that decision. He is frustrated with the Order, frustrated with Qui-Gon for not liberating his mother, frustrated with the Republic for not doing anything in the Outer Rim, grieving the loss of somebody that he loved, and now he knows what he has to do. As soon as Obi-Wan was rescued, he was going to join the Separatists. During the Battle of Geonosis, Anakin fights valiantly against the droids in protection of his master and of Padmé. However, when the Jedi are finally encircled by droids and have been essentially defeated, as Dooku offers to allow them the chance to surrender, Anakin raises his hand. I'm not going to surrender, Dooku, he says, and Dooku smiles. Well, young Skywalker, but then Anakin cuts him off. But I would like to join you he says, smiling. Then he jumps out of the circle and leaps outside of it. He sees the pained expressions of the faces of his friends. Anakin, what are you doing? Obi-Wan says. I can't stand the lies and corruption of the Republic anymore, Anakin replies. Anakin, I had so much faith in you, Obi-Wan says. But Anakin stands by his decision. While this is going on Geonosis, the discovery of the clone army is being debated by the Senate, and Mon Mothma absolutely refuses to accept emergency powers. I will not be a dictator, she resolves. The Republic does not need a military, and we can resolve our issues with the Separatists using peaceful negotiation, just like we have for years. This leads to no military being deployed to Geonosis, and the Jedi being absolutely massacred by the droid armies. Not one is left standing, including Obi-Wan and Mace Windu. Padmé is also killed in the uproar, which pains Anakin's heart. But now, he's more firm in his resolve than ever. If the Republic had made good on its promises, and if the system had actually worked, none of the conditions that would have arose in the galactic sphere of politics would have led to the rise of separatist sentiment and this violent conflict breaking out. This was the fault of one government and one government only, the Galactic Republic. Following this fiasco, many in the Senate begin to lose confidence in Mon Mothma as a wartime leader. Separatist forces overwhelm the regional security militaries of the various sectors, and many planets are taken by Grievous's hordes. Anakin becomes a prominent general as well and secures the skies of many systems by using his piloting abilities. He's a hero of the Separatists and begins to learn from Dooku about how the Jedi were even more flawed than he once believed. Dooku tells him about how Yoda had been in charge for so long, and that he believes that nobody can be in charge for that long without corruption overtaking their soul. Palpatine is quite pleased with this development, especially since he uses it as a way to manipulate his way into power. Senators, today I raise my voice in a quiet and remorseful protest. I respect all of the work that Mon Mothma has done for the galaxy. However, today I am calling for a vote of no confidence in her, as seen by the escalation of this crisis with the Separatists. The Senate roars in approval, and Mon Mothma sits down, frustrated and defeated. They vote to remove her from office, and Palpatine runs himself, campaigning on a very pro-military stance, saying that he would use the clones to counter the Separatist threat. And because of this, he ends up winning. Because so many systems are falling, the Senate immediately instills emergency powers in the executive branch, allowing for Palpatine to essentially do whatever he wants in the name of preserving the Republic. I love democracy. I love the Republic, Palpatine says, and I will lay down these powers that you have granted me once this crisis is abated. This is met with thunderous applause from the Senate. That night, when he has his victory party, he is able to actually finally dispose of his master in the same way that he does in the Plagueis novel. When Plagueis is drunk and asleep in his suite on Coruscant, Palpatine comes in and begins electrocuting his shocked master, whose eyes go wide as he had hoped that they would rule the galaxy together. Thank you for being such a useful tool in my climb to the top, Palpatine says. You will be remembered, Darth Plagueis. Then, once he's disposed of, Palpatine smiles, returning back to his quarters. The next day, he immediately orders that the remaining clones on Kamino deploy to struggling systems, and the Clone Wars begin. Anakin continues to become more and more brainwashed by Dooku as the war progresses. His power increases exponentially, especially after he begins to tap into some of the dark side emotions. As a young warrior with incredible resolve, he takes down many prominent Jedi generals in battle. His unorthodox tactics baffle many of the tactical droids that he works with, especially when they actually end up succeeding against clone soldiers. One rival, though, that Anakin always has seems to be Captain Rex, commander of the Torrent Company in the 501st, a battalion under the command of the Jedi Knight Ahsoka Tano. They would always seem to give Anakin a run for his money, and the group quickly became close rivals. One day, as Anakin is dueling with Ahsoka on one of the Outer Rim planets, they begin to discuss politics. As their blades clash and Anakin's blue meets Ahsoka's green, and Ahsoka spins prominently and acrobatically using her Form 3 lightsaber style, Anakin makes a very good point to her. Ahsoka, General of the Jedi Order and the Republic, your government is corrupt, he says. I saw through the lies of the Jedi. Maybe one day you will too. Their blades clash, and they look each other directly in the eye. Ahsoka shakes her head. No, Skywalker, she says, force-pushing him backwards. In reality, the Separatists are just as corrupt as the Republic, if not even more so. She charges at him again, rushing with her blades. Your Separatists are owned by corporations. Your Separatists are taking planets that didn't sign your constitution and imposing rule on them. Grievous has committed many atrocities against countless systems and populations, Ahsoka says, gasping for breath as Anakin swings at her even more ferociously. They aren't doing anything to help remedy slavery, she says. Anakin's eyes go wide. What do you mean by that? He says. Don't you know? They're supporting the Zygerians, the slave traders, Ahsoka says, as their blades clash once again. I've seen it for myself with Rex. You can read the official reports if you'd like. The Separatists are supporting the slavers. For a moment, Anakin is speechless, and his relentless attacks on Ahsoka stop. He'd never been told about this slavery. Dooku had lied to him. So, in the middle of their duel, Anakin turns and runs back to his ship, determined to discuss this with his new mentor face to face. If it was true, Anakin would make Dooku pay. He was tired of being manipulated. When Anakin goes to meet his mentor on Sereno, he's surprised to see that the Count is already waiting for him in his office in the massive palace. Dooku turns around, smiling slightly, and asks why Anakin had abandoned his post. Why did you lie to me about the corruption within the Separatist leadership? Anakin replies. Dooku's smirk widens. Is it truly corruption, my boy, if we are fighting for a greater good against the evil of the Republic? Anakin shakes his head. Don't talk down to me like that anymore. I don't want to hear your rhetoric or political philosophy. I want the truth. Dooku then smiles even wider. What if I told you, my boy, that the Senate is controlled by a dark lord of the Sith, known as Darth Sidious, and that the Republic was falling under his leadership? While I may have turned a blind eye to many atrocities under the Separatist government, I believe I am a far better option for the galaxy than his cruel, dictatorial reign, only seeking to further power for himself. Dooku smiles, looking at Anakin. Why did you never tell me about this? Anakin says. And Dooku paces, standing. You hadn't been ready to hear the grand plan yet, Anakin. But now, together, we can overthrow this Sith Lord and shape the galaxy how we want it to. We can get rid of the slavers. We can do whatever we want once we remove him from power. Anakin scoffs. I don't want to do anything alongside you ever again. You twisted me, used me, manipulated me just like the Jedi did. This was all just a plot to use my power. I'm not gonna do this with you again, Dooku. So be it, Skywalker, he says. If a duel it must be, then a duel you shall have. Dooku ignites his blade, and Anakin does in turn. The two whirl together in a whirlwind of force energy, creating a tornado around the room, swirling, slicing at one another, blocking ferociously, parrying each other's strikes. The bladesmanship of Dooku is absolutely incredible, especially for his old age. However, Anakin embraces his dark emotions, and he uses that to overpower the impressive yet elderly swordsman. Anakin then slices off his hands and points his blade towards his throat. "This is the end for you, Dooku. I believe that the Confederacy needs a new face of leadership," he says, "and that face is me." Then he slices off Dooku's head and resolves to actually make some change. The next day, Anakin gives a bold speech to the Confederacy. "Friends from across the CIS," he says, "I have discovered a plague upon this government. I have discovered corruption that is unmatched even by the Republic. And now, I believe that we can change that. I want to preserve our democracy, and I want to force the Republic to concede and allow us independence." This is met with a vivacious applause. This isn't what Palpatine had planned for Anakin, and he must adapt as the clones are now constantly being overpowered by the superior number of droid forces because Anakin does not hold back. The stance of the Confederacy shifts from offense to defense, protecting and liberating worlds that actually wanted to be under Separatist rule. Eventually, with the DNA strands of Jango wearing thin, along with the time that it takes to produce new clones, the Republic military begins to crumble. Under Yoda, the Jedi, while strong, are unable to be suitable generals to a failing military like this. So, Palpatine begins implementing more and more military reforms using his emergency powers, granting more power to the military and to Tarkin to recruit and conscript fighters into their ranks based on emergencies. The war is prolonged when the Republic starts to beef up their military ranks, and Palpatine refuses to sign a treaty with the Separatists. "I will not let this Republic that has stood for thousands of years crumble," Palpatine says in a speech to the Senate, met with fantastic applause. With Anakin having chosen his own path, and with the Republic continuing to devolve into a more militaristic state with Palpatine clinging on to emergency powers, it appears that peace would not be reached between the two factions anytime soon. Perhaps one day, Mon Mothma would re-emerge from political obscurity, bringing back that charisma and hope that she did all those years ago. However, today was not that day. The galaxy continues to fall deeper and deeper into turmoil, right into Palpatine's plan, and Anakin hopes that he can finally do something good about the corruption in the galaxy. Hey there everyone, today I managed to get another incredible figure from galactic politics onto the show, and I honestly don't know how these guys are coming on to Bantha Stew, but I guess they like what we have to say. So today I would like to introduce one of the stars of today's video, Mon Mothma. Hello, Chancellor of the New Republic. How are you doing today? Oh, I am doing quite well. Thank you very much for asking. So, my first question, as I ask all of our guests here at Bantha Stew, what did you think of today's video? Honestly, I quite appreciated it. I liked how it showed how Palpatine was manipulating the strings of power, even during those times when it appeared that there would be peace in the galaxy. I am often perceived as an idealist, far too great for this system to work, and Palpatine truly capitalized on that to ensure that he would secure the reins of power. I like your deep dive into how he perverted democracy for his own advantage, but at the end of the day, his plans were still unsuccessful, as Anakin Skywalker was the wild card, as always. And do you think, Mon Mothma, in this situation that you would have come back to try and liberate the galaxy from Palpatine and restore the Republic while simultaneously trying to gain peace with Anakin Separatists? Oh, I believe so. Perhaps that can be what happens in the sequel. Well, we'll see if we make a sequel to this one, but honestly, I had a lot of fun writing it. And I would like to ask you, how do you feel about being the Chancellor of the New Republic? Because you have been through a lot, and now, finally, your government is restored, your people are around, and you have what you sought to achieve. How do you feel about that? Well, There are many changes to bring in after the Empire wiped out the Republic. Building a government is not easy, especially when everything that was worked so hard to build for thousands and thousands of years is suddenly torn apart. However, I have full faith in myself, in the Organas, in everybody involved in our government, and I have seen the prowess of our bold soldiers and peacekeepers who are going out into the galaxy and bringing democracy back to the Republic, back to those poor systems that were oppressed by the Empire, and we will ensure that the Imperial remnants that remain are snuffed out. And what do you believe about all these rumors that Grand Admiral Thrawn is returning? Well, safe to say, while I may be inclined to believe General Hera and her crew, I am not so certain that Thrawn is truly returning. Plus, this is a big government. Even if I did, I don't have the executive powers to just enforce that the military go and deal with him. That is not my job. We need to have consensus. We need to work together to preserve and restore the Republic. Otherwise, how much better would I be than Palpatine? No. I would never, because I believe in building up that democratic process and furthering it. So, further investigation will be initiated into these rumors of Grand Admiral Thrawn's return to the galaxy. However, I will not use my executive power to try and stop him, unless he poses an immediate threat to our Republic and truly is alive. That's a pretty articulate response, Mon Mothma. But a lot of people say that Thrawn, he was very intelligent, he knew what he was doing, and if he were to return, even without the force and power that the Empire once had, he would be able to do sizable damage to the Republic, and possibly even unite all of these various warlords under one leader, and try to bring back the Empire. Don't you think it would be better to try and figure out that threat is gone and eliminated before it actually materializes? Well, Mr. Bantha, we cannot act upon a threat that we do not even know if it exists. There is no evidence that Thrawn has returned beyond simply the advice, the counsel, and the testimonies of very few individuals in our military. We will continue to approach this issue with caution and see where the Republic goes. This is the point of our government. Democracy, and I intend to preserve that democracy as long as I can. Well, thank you very much, Mon Mothma. I'm glad that you were able to come on the show and share your perspective with us a little. I've always admired your idealism. Even in the face of the Imperial threat, you stood tall, and it's something I aspire towards, honestly. Well, thank you, Mr. Bantha. I always love your stories, and I love hearing what you have to say about the galaxy and the people who live in it. Well, I'm going to conclude now, but again, thanks for coming on, and hey, I'm going to offer you the chance. You can say no if you want. How would you feel about doing the outro? Oh, Mr. Bantha, I would love that. Thank you all for watching today's video. If you enjoyed it, I would recommend leaving a comment and suggesting things for our future videos. What did you like? What did you dislike? Do you think that there should be a part 2? If so, what do you think should happen in that part 2? I would also recommend that you join the Discord server. It is growing each and every day with Star Wars fans and a like-minded community that also enjoys these very vibrant pieces of media. So, come and join us in the Discord server, and perhaps you'll even get to chat with Mr. Bantha yourself. Once again, thank you all for watching. Do you want to say the rest, Mr. Bantha? Oh, of course, Mon Mothma. Thank you for bringing it back to me. I appreciated it, Chancellor. Thank you for watching today's video. As always, I hope that each and every one of you have had an absolutely bantatacular day, and that you've gotten your daily delicious dose of Bantha stew.